Hey folks, it looks like a certain somebody did not like my Rags video. Specifically, he didn't like how I took Rags out of context by playing several minutes of Rags speaking and accurately summarizing his arguments in language, and how I took an almost hour-long video and condensed it into a 15-minute response, which is why he's taken my 15-minute video, condensed it into a 5-minute response that plays about 40 seconds of me speaking, and often cuts off my sentences in half when playing them. At the outset, I need to make it clear that you are not to harass or even seek out this person. Don't go looking for his video to leave negative comments, and if he comments under this video, be normal. This guy didn't sign up for a dozen or so people spamming his work. I don't care if he's a dick, we're at least 5% better than that. That said, he absolutely signed up for what I'm about to do, which is dismantle his terrible attempts to criticize my video and discuss more broadly the way that anti-woke content breeds this weird team sports mindset that I am absolutely not about. We will be addressing the fellow in question as Froggy based on his username, so let us observe Froggy's video. Right off the bat, apparently I support censorship, at least according to this thumbnail. That's news to me. I tend to be a pretty big free speech person, but we'll keep that in our back pocket. Surely he'll have a good justification for making that claim. Something Froggy probably doesn't realize, though, is that Rags, the person Froggy is defending, would relentlessly make fun of him if he decided to respond to this video. You'll see more examples of this later on, but note that the title of Froggy's video claims that I am, quote, mad about Rags, and then recall that the opening of Rags' video, which I know Froggy has seen, mocks a person for calling people mad when they are simply making fun of or criticizing something, which is what I was doing.
Are they really angry, or are they just poking fun at you? Let's see what they say. Your voice is annoying, and the fact that you are a they-them gives you no credibility at all. You are the definition of cringe. Puke. Yeah, this doesn't sound very angry. They just sound annoyed.
This is, of course, not the biggest deal in the world, but it is a little bit funny that Frogman doesn't realize he's insulted his hero. Here's how the video opens.
Let's see, has a god complex, makes pretentious video game essays. Yup, it's one of those. My favorite part about this guy is that he only gets like 9 cents a month on Patreon. And, that's adorable. He can probably afford a whole Starbucks coffee within, maybe 12 months.
Okay, let's break this down. Apparently, the joke in my Patreon bio about ascending to godhood is symptomatic of a real-life god complex. This is definitely how jokes work, and we can be confident that this is commentary coming from a reasonable individual who just wants to get the facts. Of course, back in the real world, the only god complex I care about is Series 6, Episode 11 of the hit BBC series Doctor Who. Boom, conservative owned. Oh god, he's gonna think that joke was serious too, isn't he? He, of course, knows he doesn't have an argument, so he opens with a bizarre dig at my low Patreon subscribership, which is admittedly bold given how easily one could reply by comparing our subscribers to number of videos ratios, but of course I actually don't think that number of people subscribed to you or giving you money is an important metric for your value as a human being or the quality of your arguments. Mostly because I'm not 7. And because I'm not 7, I'm also able to read decimals. This man states, and bear with me here, that I earn 9 cents a month on Patreon, which will apparently be enough to buy a Starbucks coffee in a year as long as Starbucks coffees cost $1.08. But you might want to check your math there, because you are off by a wee factor of 10. Yes, I know it's not the most important thing here, but in 2 separate places, this guy mistook 90 cents for 9 cents, and I refuse to let that slide from a guy who's hell-bent on crushing my ego. If you're gonna make fun of me, at least make it mathematically accurate. That said, I'd be foolish not to turn this into a Patreon ad, so hey, if you want even more chapters of my book, you can find them there for a whole $1. You can also find at least one upcoming video there early, and I'll do my best to post stuff early there as often as possible. Check that out in the description. Boom, I'm a business person.
But he's basically upset at Rags because Rags made a very poignant, great video replying to this YouTuber called Skitty Bitty. Long story short, Skitty Bitty made a stupid video complaining about anti-woke people. And Rags, pretty much debunked it, like annihilated it. And what's even funnier is that the video that Skitty made was like 4 minutes long, and Rags made like a 50-minute video detailing everything wrong with her video. because a lot of her points are just objectively wrong.
Alrighty, so once more, I wouldn't particularly characterize myself as being upset with Rags. I find him annoying more than anything else, but more importantly than that, what a deeply depressing look into the mind of the sort of person who likes Rags. He actually thinks that the length of the Rags video is a positive. As a reminder, 10 entire minutes of Rags' nearly hour-long video were dedicated to a nearly unrelated side tangent about a source that Anita Sarkeesian cited once, and several other sections were extended segments dedicated to things like long discussions of old triggered feminist videos that were at that point completely irrelevant to the subject at hand. Rags' video was long because it was bad and unfocused, not because he had detailed direct critiques to levy.
Like, woke people are problematic. Their media keeps on failing over and over again. So that's another story for another day. Anyway, let's just watch this video together.
Little audience I've got here lives in the real world. That said, his argument is so nonsensical that it can be refuted in literally 3 words: Baldur's Gate.
Damn that editing, right? Luckily, nobody needed to know what argument I was responding to understand the point I was making. They also probably didn't need to hear the beginning or end of the sentence. That shit's overrated, right? But maybe he'll accurately summarize what I was saying, right?
So what this weirdo is saying is that Baldur's Gate 3 is woke, and this is like the only example he uses as a woke successful game. But here's the thing, Baldur's Gate 3, after I played it, it's not woke at all. Baldur's Gate 3, yes, it does have LGBT options and whatnot, but that stuff is optional.
Oh, right, we're dealing with one of these sorts of people. No, the claim that I was making was more specific than BG3 is woke. I was specifically responding to the fact that Rags claimed Dragon Age Veilguard and Concord failed because they featured pronouns. In response, I pointed out that if aesthetically progressive content like having pronouns is enough to tank a game, then a game which not only allows the player to choose their pronouns, but also allows them to fully design stereotypically trans bodies, such as Baldur's Gate 3, would have been dead in the water. I only needed to provide a single example because my point wasn't that anything progressive is destined for success, it was only that progressive elements do not in any way preclude a game from being successful, obviously. He tries to argue that LGBT content being optional makes it non-woke, which has obviously never been the standard. After all, your character doesn't have to be LGBT in Starfield, you can just choose a male body with male pronouns and play him as heterosexual the entire game. The mere option to be queer gets frequently labeled as woke by exactly the kinds of people you expect. In fact, it's not difficult to find people complaining that the wokeness in Baldur's Gate 3 is insidious because people are becoming caught up in how great the game is and being subliminally offered feminist messages.
The thing about Baldur's Gate 3 that doesn't really make it woke, though, is the fact that you can have your character do some really diabolical stuff that would go against the whole, woke mindset. That's why a lot of people like Baldur's Gate 3, because the game offers you so much non-biased freedom, like a lot of, left-leaning games today.
Here's another deeply interesting insight into the team sports mindset going on here. A good role-playing game allows players to do stuff they think is immoral. That doesn't suddenly mean that the game's themes don't exist. Obsidian's The Outer Worlds has a great deal of left-wing messaging, anti-capitalism, feminism, LGBT acceptance, the like, but the player's also allowed to side with the capitalists and treat women and gay people poorly. Not to keep bringing up Fallout New Vegas, but that game has loads of woke ideas rattling around. It also allows you to enslave people and nuke innocent families. No shit. Let's be serious here. None of the choices in these games are unbiased. The developers obviously hold opinions on what the best thing to do in a given situation is. They just allow you to make whatever choices you want and suffer the consequences. I don't choose how I feel about a video game based on what unwoke things it allows me to do. If I'm specifically concerned with the game's politics, I would weigh the implications of those choices with the implications of positive choices and come away with some form of a nuanced perspective. All this to say, I don't dislike games that allow me to do non-woke stuff. I've never given any indication that I hold that opinion, or that I think that a game allowing you to do non-woke stuff suddenly means it's not quote-unquote woke. Froggy just has no idea what he's talking about here.
He, or whatever his pronouns are, should have mentioned Spider-Man 2 as an example of a woke successful game. And as someone who likes Spider-Man 2, I can say that the writing is definitely weaker.
This is another good example. Thank you, Froggy. I didn't mention Spider-Man 2 because it didn't fit my comparison, as to the best of my knowledge, Spider-Man 2 doesn't have an in-depth character creator, though admittedly I've only played the first game. If you'd been paying attention, you'd know why I didn't mention this game, but thanks anyway. Another recent example would be the Oblivion remaster, which now allows the player to choose body types rather than assigning those body types genders. Terraria is still going strong despite consistently making progressive-themed changes and updates, such as removing language that has traditionally been considered offensive, adding mixed gender voice options, and it's literally a game that lets you change your gender. The Outer Worlds 2 is likely to succeed later this year, and I somehow doubt that game is suddenly going to become an anti-woke utopia. These were all off-the-cuff examples when I was writing this down, and I'm not nearly as into the gaming space as I am into the film space, but the point is clear. Progressive messaging is not what causes a game to fail. In the comments, Froggy seemed to think that by saying Dragon Age didn't fail because of pronouns, I was saying that Dragon Age was financially successful, probably because he's an objective, rational observer. But, of course, once again, he's just making up things I never said. I really don't know how to explain this incredibly obvious fact to you, but saying that someone's explanation of an event is wrong does not mean the event never happened. It just means their explanation is wrong.
But my major issue with this guy's point is that he fails to acknowledge the fact that a lot of woke games have been failing left and right, especially the AAA ones. Modern Saints Row was a big failure. Nobody remembers Starfield at all.
So you understand how that wasn't the point of the video, right? At no point did I say progressive-themed games are inherently successful, and Rags' video wasn't a takedown of left-wing games. He made a couple of comments about progressive games that failed, and so I made a couple of comments in response. But besides that, in other places, Froggy has claimed to care about statistics and data, yet he never brings data himself. Facts and Figures guy might use this as an opportunity to analyze every AAA game within a certain time frame and compare their financial success to how aesthetically progressive they are, to see if maybe there's a correlation there. But of course, all he can do is point to a few specific anecdotes, imply that progressivism was the cause of failure without any evidence, and expect me to give a shit. Again, this is a great insight into the anti-woke mind. They often genuinely think that anecdotes are data. He goes off on a bunch of these anecdotes, but doesn't actually provide evidence that progressive politics affected sales, and again, since I'm a facts and figures person, I will not be responding to these claims. Do note, though, that I am fully aware simply discussing this guy is not a full profile either. This dude is a single case study, not a complete representative of all anti-woke people. I feel like somebody probably would have pointed that out in the comments, so just getting it out of the way here, obviously that's the case.
It's just very apparent that this dude doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that a lot of woke media is just failing.
Or let's go back to the classics. Tell me, do you think that Fallout 2 would break your immersion if its character creator had a pronouns option? And
that's a what-ifism argument. The fact is that Fallout 2 doesn't have that option at all, and it was made during a different time period.
Yes, that is how he cut my video. No, I don't know why. I know he thinks that saying that's a what-ifism argument actually means something, but unfortunately you cannot dismiss the very concept of thought experiments in only 4 words. A fallacious what-ifism argument is based in speculation. For instance, if you were to say, this policy caused an economic recession, and I were to reply, without evidence, what if not passing that policy would have caused an even worse recession? This would obviously not counter your point, as I have done nothing to challenge your argument except speculate. However, in my video, I was making the claim that complaining that a pronoun option in the character creator is immersion breaking is a stupid thing to do, as nearly all character creators are inherently immersion breaking. I gave the Fallout 2 character creator as an example, pointing out that if this creator included a pronoun option, there would be no change in player immersion, because we already have our immersion broken simply by having a character creator, which it doesn't exist in real life, you know? This isn't some speculative, hypothetical alternate history. Anyone with any amount of graphic design skill could go modify the character creator for Fallout 2 right this second, and since nothing about it would have substantively changed, player immersion will not have changed either.
Nexus mods will ban mods that simply remove the pronoun options, because these people seek to control you.
So 2 major points here. 1, as I mentioned before, Rags would ridicule this guy for what he's doing right now. If you remember from my previous video, Rags on multiple occasions decided to whine about how the video he was watching put text on screen, playing the whole I can't tell if you want me to read what you wrote or listen to what you said routine, almost like he's really bad at criticizing things. But Froggy's video is full of additional text making extra little arguments that he doesn't actually want to defend. It's just a little bit funny. Second, looking at the text itself, No, forcing a private company to host mods they don't want to host is anti-free speech. Specifically, it is compelled speech. More on that in a moment.
Once again, if Rags had made an actual argument here, I'd have something to refute.
Let's address this text here. No, Rags did not make an argument at this point in the video. He made a bunch of unsubstantiated claims and failed to justify them so badly he implied that a private company removing any mod would be an attempt at authoritarianism. I'm aware that Rags made what sounds like an argument, but all he did was state his opinion without justifying it.
All he said is, Nexus Mods has a terms of service, which means they want to control your speech and expression. By this logic, because again, he doesn't give any sort of caveats here, any mod removal is an attempt to make real-world 1984.
Nexus Mods is getting us closer to 1984. He actually typed that. He actually thinks that society is getting closer to 1984 because of vague cultural forces he can't defend. I'm willing to bet that he's never actually read that book, but if he has, he should see about getting his money back because holy shit.
So now Buddy is promoting censorship and anti-free speech. Like, yeah, how dare people use mods on the $60 games that they purchase?
Okay, last pause frame, and then we'll replay the whole argument in context. I don't know how to tell you this, but that's a fake quote. I never said those words, nor did I say anything approximating them. Damn, who would have thought that Froggy was an explicit liar? I really thought that this guy had integrity. That said, since I've been making fun of you this whole time, I'll throw you a bone. If anyone would like to chime in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Let's say this together. I, insert your name here, would like to say, loudly and proudly, how dare you mod something you legally paid for. There, I retroactively made your video slightly less shit, Froggy. You're welcome. Again, wonderful example of the anti-woke brain. They don't have any real way of attacking what you say, so they'll just make up a fake quote to attack. Many of the accounts I've covered on this channel in the past use this strategy. It's pretty funny, also sad. Now let's rehear everything we just heard all together.
Nexus Mods will ban mods that simply remove the pronoun options, because these people seek to control you. They seek to control how you can speak, what you can express, and how you can express it.
Once again, if Rags had made an actual argument here, I'd have something to refute. But as it stands, all he said is, Nexus Mods has a terms of service, which means they want to control your speech and expression. By this logic, because again, he doesn't give any sort of caveats here, any mod removal is an attempt to make real-world 1984. Removing sexual abuse material.
So now Buddy is promoting censorship and anti-free speech. Like, yeah, how dare people use mods on the $60 games that they purchase? And yeah, some games do have sexual abuse in them. Have you ever heard of GTA or Silent Hill 2? Clown?
So once again, my video never said that people can't mod games that they paid for. This just did not happen. In fact, I explicitly stated that even if Nexus Mods doesn't want to host something, you can probably find it somewhere else. If you want to make a racist mod for your video game in the comfort of your own home, you're an idiot, but I also wouldn't ever advocate for any sort of legal recourse for that action. I also will not compel a private organization to waste resources hosting your mod in the same way that I believe in freedom of the press, and I also believe that the newspaper has the right to not print every random person's manifesto. You are the anti-free speech person in this case because you believe private organizations should be compelled to endorse speech they don't agree with. Now, is there a compelling conversation to have about the power private organizations have in crafting and controlling narratives? Yes, absolutely. I believe that large social media sites have too much power and are manufacturing consent by what they promote and what they suppress. But none of that means that they should be forced to host everything you throw at them. He also tries to call me a clown because I said that mods that involve sexual abuse should be banned, but if you were paying attention to my wording, I specifically said sexual abuse material. I was referring to any sort of mod that included real-life abuse material. I don't think this is too hard to have figured out from context, but this guy is hell-bent on trying to get a gotcha on me, though by my count, he has failed pretty darn miserably. Better luck next time, I guess. Thanks for watching. Once again, do not harass this person, but do consider checking out my book and my Patreon, where you can find a little bit of bonus content and early videos whenever possible. Now, make like a frog and bounce.